Well, we're back again to work on some more of this, the 7th grade message in our design project. And when we left off, we had already done the first 3 letters, and so with any luck whatsoever, we should be able to make more progress today, since each day we should be able to, you know, push the production a little bit farther. So it looks like we've got, I believe, 10 colors. Let's review. This is our colors that we will be using, and so there are 10 of them. You will recall, if you've been keeping up with the instruction, that we did a worksheet together. We drew it out and then colored it in using combinations of these 10 colors that you see on the left right here. And then when we were finished with that, well, this is what the project is based on. We took our message that I chose for you, since this is an e-learning project, and also furthermore, if you were to be making up this project, if you'd missed some class time, this would be the one I would have you make up. And so we're spelling out the message: an ounce of prevention is greater than a pound of cure. And all of these symbols that you see in front of you are letters of the alphabet in a naval flag language. We've simply just altered the color combinations for 7th graders to give you a greater amount of creative control over what you're doing. So with that in mind, let's continue on here. So the next letter, there's something I want to do here, because the OZ is an abbreviation for the word ounce, and so I want to put a period down here to represent that, so that more people are aware of what that actually means. So we'll leave that in there. I'm going to probably color it black so people know it's a punctuation mark, okay? And then we're going to take the letter Z out of here, as we have been doing so frequently when we get ready to color these in, and dust it off carefully, and we're ready to move on here. So our letter Z on our flag chart there, or our worksheet, looks to me like it's light blue, violet, yellow, green, and tan. So I'm just going to move that off to the side. I've already got a tan here. I will be using an index card under my hand so that I don't smear my work. That's called a slip sheet. It's a good idea. It keeps you from smudging things up. So we're going to get started here, and with any luck whatsoever, we'll make good progress. So I've been fortunate during the period of time of this project so far that I haven't even snapped off my pencil tip on a colored pencil yet. So if all goes well, I'll get the most mileage I can possibly get out of my box of colored pencils. So I use them pretty carefully. However, not everybody has got the same cautious work habits that I've got. But I would recommend you to treat your colored pencils with some level of respect. The ones in the classroom have been abused badly many times, and so they don't give you the best quality coloring sometimes. So if you've got your own set of colored pencils and they're working for you, take care of them and protect them, and make sure you use every little inch of the colored pencil that you can possibly get sharpened for just making art with, instead of, you know, throwing at people in the hallway or beating against the tabletop, making them almost impossible to sharpen if you do that. So stay focused on making artwork and let the colored pencils do their job, which is to help you make that artwork instead of abusing them. Alright, that looks good already. I like this tan color. It seems to go well up against the other colors, especially this magenta, which is funny because over here we got tan and magenta together. Okay, on our letter Z, we're going to go to this light blue next that I've got right here, and it's already sharpened as well. And so that's in the, let's see, upper portion. So we'll be using this triangle now. And so if you can be doing this project right along with me, and if you keep up with the production rate that I'm going at, you should get it done relatively quickly. Now, keeping up with the pace of my production, sometimes if you want good work, is difficult. Now, but that's everybody has to work at a pace that's comfortable for them. However, it's important to continuously work and apply yourself in order to get the project done. A lot of times people just don't apply themselves, and then they wonder why they don't think they've had enough time to get the project done. And you know, if you are working along with me, I don't see how you can't get the project done in the amount of time that I'm giving you. Now, some of the 8th graders, their projects are a little more complicated, and they require a little bit more work away from the video instruction. So, while you all are sitting wherever you're at right now, coloring along with me while we do this, the 8th graders are trying to think and reason through their project and pick out what symbols they want to use to represent certain ideas about themselves. So we're simply just at this point, we're already coloring. They're not quite that far yet. Alright, so that's light blue. For light blue, it sure seems to seal down real nicely. I'm aiming for all of the little skipped over areas. And that's what I'm always looking for, is opacity. And some people don't think opacity is that important. No, it's important. If you ever have your house painted or your room painted or your car painted, you'll want that paint to be opaque. You won't want to see the old paint underneath it. Alright, let's move on here. So we see, let's see, on the letter Z, the right side is violet, so I'll get that one out of here. And now I may have to color in my exclamation point gray, because black and violet are so close together in value. Not my exclamation point, my period. That we might not be able to really see the black, so I might have to go with gray. Let's see if the letter O, that'll show up. It'll have to be gray. I like to be able to see anything that we put into a piece of design work. It's important that if you are going to use a punctuation mark of some sort or another, because that's not on the worksheet anywhere, that you don't confuse people when you're trying to communicate your message, which in this case is an ounce of prevention is greater than a pound of cure. So we're abbreviating the word ounce, and so we're using OZ as the abbreviation for ounce, and so we need to throw that punctuation mark in there because it clarifies that idea for people, and otherwise they might never figure out precisely what they're trying to read. They only get to the 4th, 5th, the 6th letter before they get all confused. So you have to enable your viewers sometimes. You have to almost lead them to the answer sometimes that they're looking for, especially if you want them to get a certain message, a specific message out of the artwork. In this case, there is a specific message embedded into the artwork. But these make for some pretty neat projects. This is one of our more popular projects amongst the student body. It's accessible to them. It's adaptable in some circumstances. Okay, the last portion on here is a yellow-green. So we simply fish our yellow-green out of our handful of colored pencils and keep doing what we're doing here. So some of the coloring is a little bit more complex than other coloring. The letter N is always a complicated, long haul, tedious work. But some of these, the letters O, letter Q, letter B, those are really pretty simple. Letter E is not much to it either. Letter A. So, if you're sitting on your own at home, I mean, I would be listening to some music or something while I'm doing this, or sitting outside at a picnic table if the weather's nice. since there's no sports to watch or participate in right now. Now the green doesn't quite seal down the same way as the, this yellow-green seems to have light and dark areas in it. It's funny. I don't know if you can see that on the projection screen or not, but I can see it from where I'm coloring at. Alright, so now I go back and try to find any specks of white showing through and seal them down carefully. Tuck those lines together. And then it looks like we're ready to deal with this punctuation mark right here. And the letter V is blue. Okay, that'll show up. So we're going to use gray in this case on our punctuation mark, which is a period in this case. Alright. Okay, now we move on to the next one, which is the letter O. We've already done the letter O once, so we can just simply reflect back on what we've already done. And move on there. Alright, so this is the letter O we've already done, so all we've got to do is repeat it over here. So I can remove the worksheet for a moment so we can see the whole message. Erase our letter O. Looks like I'm going to have to take down that corner. Sometimes when you get coloring, the paper starts to buckle a little bit, and that's kind of causes my camera to flash bright and dim many times. So I'm going to just, for the moment, I'm just going to hold that down gently with a carefully placed piece of tape. Okay, now we're back to magenta, and it looks like jade green, so I'm going to, I guess, address the magenta first. So we're already on to the second letter. This kind of goes fast sometimes when you're, sometimes you get into the groove after a few letters and your hands are tough, you're focused on what you're attempting to do. The project's starting to look like something instead of just this idea you had when we were doing the worksheet and taking the notes. But everything that was in the notes will show up in this project. And so we do the notes not necessarily just to become more informed about the subject, but also to give you background information and production information on how to do your projects. And so everything that was covered in the notes, we will go over in this project at some point in time. Color is the one, part 3 of your notes on design. Well, we're coloring right now. Color is one of the most important parts of making a piece of design work. And the elements of art and the principles of design are not just for making what we call design work. They're applicable. You can apply them across to any type of artwork, from sculpture to monuments to paintings and calligraphy. All of these things are types of art, and the elements of art and the principles of design are not just for what we call design work, like we're doing now. However, you use them all appropriately when you're making, say, a painting or a drawing. If you apply the principles of design, you're practicing a type of art called Constructivism. So if you're going to make a drawing, even if it's a portrait of somebody, but you apply the elements of art and the principles of design in order to create that, then you are a constructivist. And I don't think that's such a bad thing to be, if you're going to have to figure out what kind of art you do. So they're like a recipe that we use to make artwork with. And just like recipes, if you're going to make brownies, you should probably follow a recipe for making brownies. You shouldn't follow a recipe for making other things, or or use no recipe at all, just throw a bunch of stuff into a pan and hope it works. And it usually doesn't work anyway, whether you're making brownies or not. Alright, wow, this magenta is very rich. It shows up really well on the projector. So I've been lucky enough not to snap off any pencils, but a lot of that has got to do with the way I use the pencil sharpener. Now, the pencil sharpener where you're at, if you're watching this at home or you are watching this as an e-lesson from some remote location, well, then you have whatever pencil sharpener you've got. I like to use little handheld pencil sharpeners. It keeps me at my work longer, and that's a good thing, especially if you're easily distracted and you get up every 5 seconds to go sharpen a pencil. Now, at home, you may not have one of these small handheld pencil sharpeners, but at the physical classroom at Warner, we do. Every 2 seats has got a small plastic cup that has a pencil sharpener in it, and so whoever's at that table on either side of that pencil sharpener can sharpen their pencils when they need to. And that has really saved a lot of time on projects over the years. It's also kept down the noise and the traffic back and forth to the pencil sharpener. And also, colored pencils just mess up a pencil sharpener anyway. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I figured that out after we sharpened a few thousand pencils. The pencil sharpener was just gummed up, and it was just a mess. Alright, that magenta looks good. Now I'm going to go to, it looks like some jade green down here, so I'm on that next. So I'm hoping we'll get through about 4 shapes today in one class period. It's funny, you put this green next to this gray and this green next to this gray, and it makes that gray look greenish. That's funny. So that's a phenomenon in painting called local color. And it reflects even if it's even if you've got a black object, but you put a red object next to it, some of that red will reflect into the black and affects it. So when people are painting, painters see those things. Most people don't see all these things. Most people, when you ask them what color grass is, they would say, well, it's green. And if little kids, little students, elementary school students, they'll color in an entire area of grass as though it was all just perfectly green. And if you look at grass carefully, it's not green at all. It's some green and some brown, and there's shadows in it, dark greens and black shadows in it. There's, debris stuck down in the grass that's all kinds of different colors, gum wrappers. So it's not one uniform color. Even a fine mowed golf course or a fine mowed ball field is still got variations in it based on the texture of the grass and the way the light is hitting it. So, things are not as simple as one color. Now, in this particular project, we're breaking it down to pretty much just pure colors. And that's not too bad either for what we're attempting to do. But careful viewers of the world will notice that it's visually much more complex than they think it is. That's why you ask a bunch of kindergartners who knows how to draw, and everybody in the classroom raises their hand. And then by the time you get to be a 7th, 8th grade, or even an adult, and you ask that same question, how many people raise their hands? Almost nobody, because they realize how difficult it is as they get older. And so even if you're just drawing a picture of yourself, a self-portrait is a very difficult thing to do, to make it come out looking like you, so that you recognize it. That's pretty tricky. So we've done self-portraits before, and people don't like them. They're a good exercise, but they're frustrating. And sometimes self-portraits are merciful. They make you look better than you really are. I guess if you're the artist, you should look better than you really are if you make a self-portrait. Albrecht Dürer has a great self-portrait he did as a painting of himself, and he's wearing some of his fanciest clothing, and he's got this long, beautiful, curly hair. He's dressed up. He was a good painter and a printmaker and a draftsman, meaning he drew a lot, just kind of like we're doing right now. I'm about out of jade green. Better re-sharpen the pencil again. So I try to get as much mileage out of my colored pencil as I can, so I don't spend all my time sharpening a colored pencil. I say that a lot, but it's true about getting off the work. You have to stay focused when you're making something like this, or it will never get done. But that's how you develop a long attention span, is by applying yourself to things for long periods of time. So it's like any task that you want to master or get good at. It requires repeated training, focused practice and effort, and then it just, eventually it doesn't seem that difficult to you. But that's just the acquisition of almost any complex skill, and making art is a complex skill. This particular piece that we made, it's not a coloring book. We're coloring it, but it's not like a coloring book. We had to make the artwork first. And so when you have to make your own artwork, it's a pretty complicated skill. And then finishing it, once you've got it started, is sometimes even more complicated. Alright, this is starting to look pretty good here. So this project is going to be memorialized evidently in the because this will probably always be an e-lesson or a makeup lesson. So we'll see how it works. Alright, that looks pretty good. I don't see much in the way of lack of opacity. There's maybe a couple spots right there. Huh? That's pretty good. Looks pretty good. It's slightly different than this green only because of the lighting down here right now. Okay, now we're going to go to letter F. Let's check it out. Well, letter F, our favorite color, magenta's back in there again. And in this case, I'm going to have to sharpen that magenta up. Alright, looks like it's magenta, light blue, and then yellow-green on each corner there. Oop, I've got to remember to erase that letter, because I will forget that, and that will show through the coloring sometimes. Okay, so I'll dust it off there. Very good. Now, back to the magenta. So I hope everybody is keeping up with the production here. Each week we do a work grade, daily working grade, based on your work habits, and so at the end of the week of instruction, the same way here, we will be doing a work grade, and it's going to be kind of tricky to figure out how to do that, but I'm expecting that everybody will simply just either scan or take a photograph of what they've done this week and then email that to me either through the school email or to the Google Classroom. I think they're linked together. And I will be able to take a look at what you've done and your assessment of your own work habits for the week, and I will agree with them, or I will, I think, have to correct them. And if I don't get back to you in the physical classroom, if I was agreeing with your work habits grade, I would simply just circle it in red with an ink pen. However, if we're doing distance learning or e-learning, we're going to have to alter the way we do that. So here's what I'm going to say is I will only change your grade if I think that there's something, if you're like giving yourself a 10 and you've got nothing done for the week. And so that's something that, you know, when you look on Progress Book, you'll be able to see. And if you've got questions about that, then, you know, you should email me and we'll talk about it. But most of the time, the students are really pretty honest about their self-grading of their work habits, and I rarely have to change their grade. Sometimes I have to raise it, in fact. Other times, you know, some people haven't done anything and they still think that they are deserving of, you know, model student status, like with 9.5s and 10s. And in that case, you'll notice it when you check Progress Book, and if there's an issue with it, you should email me and I will explain it to you. But there is a grading sheet that we use and you will be using as well. And it's all going to be just like as if we were in the regular classroom. That's how I'm trying to model all of this instruction, so that if we are back together in a physical classroom before long, then it won't seem a great deal different than what we're doing right now. So I frequently, in fact in every class, I draw and I paint with the students. Many times when we're doing the design work such as this, once it's drawn, I allow you all to you know, color it in, since you've already got the worksheet, and I just monitor your work and circulate around the classroom and, you know, chastise you for getting off task, and, you know, praise you for when you stay at work. But a lot of times, if I notice that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, I won't talk to you because I don't want to disrupt you. And so that's a good habit. If you don't hear me talking to you when we're in the physical classroom, you're probably doing enough work to not get my attention by just sitting there, which I notice in the physical classroom. Now here, it's difficult for me to notice that in this circumstance, but this is where you have to be more self-motivated in these types of classes. It's almost like you know, using a computer for homeschooling. Those homeschool systems that are computer-based are a lot like this, I suppose, but you have to be motivated to work on your own to get the lessons done. And there's a lot of kids just really struggle with that. If you don't have a teacher standing right over top of you telling you to get your work done, it's not likely you're going to get it done without somebody kind of pushing you to do it. So, and that's not a teacher's favorite job by any means, but it's necessary in the work we do. So, speaking of the work we're doing, this is coming along pretty nicely right now. That magenta diamond looks beautiful there, floating in the middle of that nice square. So, I'm looking for any skip overs that I haven't got, and it looks like I'm ready to move on here. That's a pretty nice looking dense color there. So on my letter F, where is it? It looks like we're going with, I'll go with the light blues next, and it looks like I've got one already pretty sharpened up. So I'm going to protect this by putting my slip sheet over it. And I think these are opposite corners, so when you've got one color pencil in your hand, it's hard to put it down when you have to change portions of the drawing. But sometimes it's a good idea if you're not real super confident with your coloring skills, and if you kind of got dirty hands, you'll smear your work around more than you may think. So using a card underneath your hand is kind of important, or just a piece of notebook paper, a fresh piece of notebook paper would work too. And it keeps the dirt from the back of your hand from getting on your work. And furthermore, it also keeps you from smearing your artwork around, especially if you're working with a media like charcoal or pastels. These are very smudgy materials and dusty, and you get them smeared together, then you kind of lose your drawing a lot of times, especially when you're working with charcoal. Charcoal is a great media. It's very messy, and by the time you get done working with it, you usually have charcoal all over yourself and part of the room, and hopefully mainly on your drawing. So it's important to, you know, have some knowledge of the materials you're working with, so that you don't make a fantastic drawing and then get it all smeared together just through lack of knowledge of the materials. And you know, some practice and techniques like the slip sheet thing. This has always worked for me, and I think one of my art teachers I think it was my art teacher in middle school explained that to us. Louise Leibold, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade art teacher. Now, I didn't have her as an 8th grader because I chose to take another course called drafting. And drafting was a class where we did complicated drawings with complex measurements and drafting tools like T-squares, if you know what those are, and triangles and compasses and certain types of patterns and templates. And so it was a fascinating class. Nice fancy drawing desks, you know, everybody got their own drawing desk. And so then many years later, when I was a senior in high school, I took an architectural design mechanical drawing course, which was really complicated drawing, but it really put a lot of emphasis on mathematics and geometry and you know, real serious measurements that had to be very carefully done. We used protractors to measure out angles of stuff, and we just drew a picture of a 5-pointed star once, and it was almost impossible to get it perfect. And there's ways to do it. And so our instructor, Mr. Hamilton, was really tough on us about the mathematics, and he would just look at our drawing of a star or a chisel or a screwdriver or a gear, and he would know whether we did the math or not, or whether we were faking it. And he didn't like it when we faked it. He gave me one of my very first attentions as a high schooler. I think Ms. Leibold gave me my first attention as a middle schooler. She was the art teacher, but oh, what was his name? Simpson. I think he gave me my first attention as a high schooler, as a senior in high school. Alright, now let's see what we got here. These are yellow-green. So, I'll get my yellow-green out. It looks like it could use a sharpening too. I think I used these colored pencils in a previous project. Okay, this is going to have to go up here, so I'm going to peel my tape back as far as I can get it for right now. I may have to dress that up another time, but I like it to be taped down. So this lime green really shows up great against this magenta, I've got to say that. So the value is really good. So value is like the difference between, or the relationship between light and dark. Things that you've got in your artwork, what we call images. In this case, excuse me, this image is just a diamond shape, right? Or the image we're making right now is coloring a triangle. So these are simplistic images, but they carry a big message with them, and so you don't have to have complicated imagery to have a solid message. And almost put the green into the magenta, and that would not look so good. Alright. Now, so we're making pretty good progress here on. Oh, well, I guess that's the 35 or 36 minutes. I'm going to finish up my letter right here, and we got in at least 3 of them today. So it took us. We only got 2 done on the first day, I think, and then we got 3 done this day. And so, you know, we're making progress, and that's all we can really do is 35, 40 minutes at a time. Just like we would in a regular physical art class. We do it the same way. Okay, I'm going to finish this out, and then that's going to be a session before we move on to the next thing. So time goes by pretty fast when your mind is occupied, I've noticed. And my mind's been occupied for some time now by working on these videos and making sure that the lessons that we would normally do in the physical classroom are getting out there to the students. But I can't make you participate. You have to be able to do that on your own. And so e-learning has has advantages and drawbacks. I guess you could do your art project anytime during the day that you wanted, but you have to have the self-discipline to do it. And you don't have to just, show up at the regular time of your class when you have this type of a lesson. You can just tune in and follow along. Now, I really thrive in just the regular physical classroom, personally. It's difficult for me to learn a great deal without that personal interaction between a student and a teacher. However, some people, this works for them, and so if it's working for you, then keep at it, and you don't have to work so hard. It makes sense to you to be able to do learning this way. For me, I'm a very traditional learner. It's best for me to be in a classroom. But I'll tell you what, I am getting a lot of production done here. And so that looks like a pretty good letter there. So in our next session, if we've been able to go, we did 1 on just barely got started, and then 2, and then 3, we should be able to do 4 or 5 by in the next session. And it looks like we've got some complex and some relatively easy letters too. P's not so hard, those 2 E's not so hard, but the N and the R can take a while. So if we get 4 or 5 done in the next session, that's going to be a good one. Alright, let's put this off to the side, see what we've been making for the moment. Got to say, it looks pretty good. It's funny, that tan right there blends almost perfectly in with my natural wood board in the background. You can barely see it off camera. Alright, well, that's enough. We'll do some more later.